Some craziness on Capitol Hill. Tell me if you heard that one before. This time when Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell shuts Liz Warren down while the Massachusetts senator was reciting a letter from Dr. King Jr.'s widow. Did McConnell go way too far? Then our legal panel here to look at the court battle over President Trump's travel ban and how the president is going after the judicial branch. We'll look at the dangers of where that might lead. Also, Melania Trump with some lawsuits of her own. The reason for her latest defamation suit is raising some legal questions of their own. We'll explain. Evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday night. Our attorneys, they're on standby. They'll be with us to discuss a myriad of big legal stories in just a moment, and there are many tonight. But they take a back seat this evening thanks to a pair of Republican PR debacles that happened yesterday that still have people talking. One involving Kellyanne Conway, the other starring Elizabeth Warren and Coretta Scott King. Let me bring in Andrew now with the details.
Well, Rich, last night Democrats were doing another all-night talkathon demonstrating resistance against the nomination of Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama to be Attorney General, since Democrats lack the votes to block his confirmation, which could happen this hour. As part of her speech last night, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren read a letter from civil rights icon Coretta Scott King. The letter was written in 1986 as part of the then successful effort to block Sessions from being named a federal judge. Here's a clip from her speech and what happened that's got everyone talking today.
Coretta Scott King also wrote to the Judiciary Committee about the Sessions nomination in 1986. And this is what she wrote. They are mothers, daughters, sisters, fathers, sons, and brothers.
Mr. President.
They are...
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama as warned by the chair. Senator Warren, quote, said Senator Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens. I call the senator to order under the provisions of Rule 19.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I am surprised that the words of Coretta Scott King are not suitable for debate in the United States Senate. I ask leave of the Senate to continue my remarks.
Is there objection?
Object.
I appeal the ruling.
Objection is heard. The senator will take her seat.
The senator will take her seat. McConnell argued that Warren's speech had violated some Senate Rule 19, which states no senator shall indirectly or directly by any form of words impugn to another senator or to other senators or any conduct or motive unbecoming or unworthy of a senator. But just because Senator Warren was blocked from speaking on the floor, it doesn't mean she stopped speaking.
So right now what I'd like to do is outside the Senate, I just want to read the letter.
The Warren story also exploding on social media, in large part because of what McConnell later said. Quote, Senator Warren was given a lengthy speech, McConnell noted. She had appeared to violate the rule. She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted. She persisted immediately began trending on social media with people posting pictures of women who have changed history with the tagline, she also persisted. Rich?
My God, a softball to Elizabeth Warren. But nonetheless, the optics of it, so bad. And Mitch McConnell, I don't care what people think about him politically, not a dumb guy. Why would he do that? And of all times, as she's reading Coretta Scott King's letter.
It looks bad, and it doesn't pass the smell test just on its own either. Think about that. I mean, yes, she said something that was critical of Jeff Sessions, who is a sitting U.S. senator, but he's also a nominee to be the Attorney General. So he was being discussed in that capacity as a nominee for Attorney General and not as a sitting senator. And she's reading 30-year-old criticisms from Coretta Scott King. So it seemed very much a reasonable point of the conversation. Otherwise, how can you legitimately debate the merits or lack thereof of Sessions' nomination for AG? Then on top of that, it looks terrible. You had other senators today, including Tom Udall and I think Cory Booker, who read the same Coretta Scott King letter, but it was only Elizabeth Warren, only a woman, who was basically told to sit down and shut up. That does not look particularly good for the Republicans.
And for Elizabeth Warren, the question she was already getting was, what about 2020? She didn't, pour accelerant on that rumor today. But nonetheless here, this is not going away. This
Yeah,
vocal opposition, there's fights right now as to how much to fight. Court nominee Gorsuch, for example, the base is livid. They want more of this. I'm not sure if this is good or bad for Democrats in terms of tactics on Capitol Hill, but nonetheless, stuff like what happened last night only feeds the beast.
We've been talking about the possibility of a phenomenon called protest fatigue. There's been so many protests, the immigration ban and some of the other policies and the women's march that we saw in Washington, and there are legitimate questions as to whether people will start to get sick and tired of seeing protests on the TV every night, all aimed at the Trump administration or all aimed at Republicans. This kind of thing is a completely new problem. And it leads to another fresh round of protests. These are happening online. You're not seeing anybody marching in the street. But it's like a breath of fresh air for the anti-Trump and anti-Republican crowds.
And it can go in a T-shirt and it can go in a tweet.
And
they
keep
consumable.
popping up with different things that just seem not well thought through.
Now, to me, this other story even more significant, and I think it really encapsulated a lot of the frustration, not just for people in our business here, but where's the line between fake news, alternative realities, and all the rest? The other major Republican PR headache is on the shoulders of Trump's senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway. Here she was with Jake Tapper yesterday on CNN, and Tapper did not pull any punches.
I guess the problem is it is very difficult to hear criticisms of the media for making mistakes, and certainly the media makes mistakes. But it's very difficult to hear those criticisms from a White House that has such little regard day in, day out for facts, for truth, and who calls us fake news for stories that they don't like.
Well, Jake, let me just say, we have a very high respect for the truth, and I can only speak for me, and I'm sorry that I misspoke. It wasn't like I was trying to get people to believe something existed that didn't. That's easy to figure out, even though the network I was on...
You cited it a couple times before that one interview.
Yes,
you know that.
Well, I was misquoting.
Okay, she was talking about referencing the Bowling Green massacre, but it was so many other things.
There's 24 minutes to the whole thing, and at one point Tapper was even like, yeah, but the president just lied. He lied about the crime rate going up and being at an all-time high or a 50-year high. That's just not true. Or talking about the size of the crowds at the inauguration. That's just not true. It was a good manifestation of the questions and a lot of the complaints that a lot of people have had with the lack of truthfulness from the Trump administration. And particularly well aimed at Kellyanne Conway, who had been barred from CNN last weekend because she was conveniently not telling the truth a little bit too often. And also because she seems to be the best one in the Trump administration at shifting the complaints or shifting the targeted questions around and turning it back out on the media, or spitting out so much chum into the water that it's hard to pin her down on any one thing because she throws so...
I don't know about you. I've seen, and maybe as silly as it sounds after SNL, when the Spicer performance by McCarthy was so spot on, that there's been a little bit of a different tone. And listen, I know a lot of people, obviously you don't have time for it, but we watch the press briefings every day. The verbal jujitsu that Sean Spicer and Kellyanne Conway, when they go out there to try and answer questions, for example, one of the stories this week was that the media the president says that we in the media don't tell or consciously don't want to share stories of terror attacks. They list stories like the attack at the Pulse nightclub, like the attacks in Paris. Like I can go on, obviously San Bernardino. These things that we've covered ad nauseum on this program, days that we cover these and more. When pressed on that, they want to change the subject and say that's not what, you're taking it out of context, when it's literally what the commander-in-chief is saying. So they have the job, Andrew, of trying to defend their boss, pretend that he didn't say these things, and try and move on as quickly as they can. But now what's happening as an example with that specific story is people aren't just talking about what's in the words, but what's not in them. For example, left out of that screed of all the stories he never covered was attacks that we've seen here by right-wing fanatics, including white supremacists. The Charleston church shooting. That wasn't listed at all. And there was about 4 other examples like that. And then it begs the question, well, where's the agenda with where it's going? I think they're learning you can't win this media war, especially with the person that you're trying to defend on a daily basis, when, as you say, it's not just chum he puts in the water, but it's indefensible statements with no facts.
You had me on all of those points until you got to the point where you said they may be learning about. I think they want confrontation with the media. I think the other thing
tone's changed.
I think
she changed with Tapper. Spicer changed at least the last couple of days of the press briefing.
But Spicer's still getting his head handed to him for the most part in the briefing room. Look, I think there's also a power struggle going on within the Trump inner circle between Bannon and Conway and Priebus and Spicer and a few others sprinkled in there too. And Trump watches and critiques his staff in large part based on what he sees on TV. This might have been a play also for a little power push on Conway's part. I may be the last one standing if everybody else is getting beaten up by the media, so I'm going to make nice with the media at least right now, and we'll see where where everyone
stands. Got to pick a horse. Is it going to be Priebus here? Is it going to be Bannon? Who's going to be the person with the ear of the president? Well, one of the stories we're going to get into obviously has been that ban, and specifically what Trump has also said about the courts as we await their decision. We're going to bring in our legal panel right now to talk about that court battle and also the political battle that the president has started with the judiciary branch and whether it's just fun to watch or if it's actually really dangerous.